Welcome everyone to uh, YouTube. I'm like thinking I'm back in Blog Talk Radio, but that was our new introduction to Viyahta's Tiny House Village. We're in YouTube land tonight. Where am I? I'm still on roller skates. And I have a really, really special guest tonight. Mr. Vandorn Hinnant is joining me, and he's an extraordinary artist. And in this journey I'm having to establish a village of not only tiny buildings, smaller houses, but conscious people. I am just, the universe is introducing me to the most amazing souls who are conscious and so creative. So let me introduce Vandorn Hinnant. He was on my Blog Talk show on Friday, and or not Friday. It's actually been 2 weeks,
2 weeks, yes.
and we agreed to come back together and do this on YouTube so that we can reach more people, because Facebook is somewhat limited to our friends, and we want to reach more people with this higher knowledge, sacred geometry message. So thank you, Van Dormant, for joining me again. How are you this evening?
Great. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Yes.
Great. I love those geometry figures hanging over your head. Just feeling the energy just of seeing that, all that geometry. So Van Dorn is going to share with us, kind of give us a recap of what we talked about 2 weeks ago on what, first of all, how he came into this planet, what part of the planet he came in on, and what his family life was all about there, where he developed such a beautiful art skill and gift. So thank you, Van Dorn. Take it away.
All right. Well, I landed on planet Earth in this body in 1953, March of 1953. And I had the good fortune of having a mother who had received a college education. So her intent was to provide her children with as much as she could provide them with in regards to education. So my father actually was a laborer. He worked for his father as a plasterer. And so a lot of my aesthetic sensibility comes from my relationship to my father and his father in terms of being makers. My mother actually taught home economics, but once again was passionate about providing her children with educational opportunities. So I had so many wonderful opportunities as a child. I actually went on a trip with Boy Scouts when I was maybe 13 or 14 around the country, and had a lot of other beautiful experiences. But what's most important about my family life is that no one in my family said, you must do this. No one tried to direct the traffic in my life. No one, as far as I can recall, ever said, you must be such and such or so and so. So I had the freedom to remain identified with my relationship to what people conveniently call art. Now, I will tell you that at a particular intersection in my life, I realized that what I was creating was having an impact upon individuals who were witnessing it. And this goes back to works that were being created in the late 70s and the early 80s and mid 80s. So I began to think about what I was doing and the effect that it was having upon individuals. So I realized that I was doing something different, because I had a number of people that told me, I've never seen an abstraction that I could identify with until I saw your work. So that meant something to me, because I had studied what the artists who came into their own in the early 1900s had done. Most of the artists that we know from the European persuasion, I was educated as to what they had done and what have you. I knew their stories to some extent. And then we have significant individuals like Hale Woodruff, and we have Wilfredo Lamb, two individuals who I would venture to say ended up being what we conveniently call abstractionists. But the term abstraction is a very much misunderstood term. And so what I want to talk about is how individuals such as Wilfredo Lamb and such as Hale Woodruff were actually bringing something forward from their African ancestry into the human equation, and actually resculpting these patterns and messages and presenting them in a modern context, which was called art. But one of the things that wants to be understood about the art of making is that all patterns have meaning, all shapes have meaning. And the problem is that most people have no idea as to what the meaningfulness is of patterns that fall before them.
Well, you said in the first show, you shared with us how these patterns affect the psyche or the emotions. And by the way, you mentioned that your mother was a home economics teacher.
Yes.
Here's another synchronicity or similarity. I don't know if I mentioned that my stepmother was a home economics teacher.
No, you didn't
My
tell
first stepmother.
me. Yeah.
We're both Pisces. You're born within the same week of my sister and I, and so it just keeps going. And it's interesting. You're talking about history, African history, and you've studied not just art but history, right?
No, actually, I studied history independent of my studies of art. Yes.
Right.
My study of history is a very curious adventure because I haven't studied what is published for the general public to read. I have studied and I continue to study what the general public is, what is being hidden from the general public regarding history, human history, the history of the planet, etc. So there's a tremendous amount of history that is obscure and somewhat invisible because we have conversations afoot like conspiracy theories. And for those that don't know, the term was actually formulated and created inside of the CIA war room. And I use the word war room intentionally because what people think the CIA is not true. But I don't want to get into that story. Let us just
that's a deep rabbit hole there.
right, exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't want to go there because I shy away from talking about what people conveniently think of as politics and religion for the simple fact that a lot of people have a lot invested in being right about what they believe. And I'm happy for people to believe whatever they choose to believe. That's none of my business. My job is to simply share what I understand to be true, and people can take it or leave it.
Now, do you have anything you want to hold up for us before I go to this your gallery of secrets?
Well, actually, remember those images that I flashed on the screen before?
Right.
I still have. I brought those in, but I don't have those other forms, those other geometries. Remember the other geometries that I was holding up to the screen? The only one
Right.
that I have, the only one that I have is the one that I'm wearing here, and that's a carbon 60 on the outside. What is called is a carbon 60 molecule. I'll just take it off. Yes. So we're going to see some of these on the Etsy site. I'm not sure if we have one of these posted on the Etsy site, but let me hold this up to the camera. For those who know something about organic matter, the carbon 60 molecule is a molecule of, give me a second, I'm trying to figure out which way to hold this thing. It's a molecule of
That's good.
60 carbon atoms. So that's actually a spherical form. And on the inside of it, it has another pattern. It's called an icosahedron, which is a marriage of the icosahedron and the dodecahedron. So you have 12 pentagonal faces and 20 equilateral triangle faces combined together. That's what's on the interior of this one. But all of those cosmic geometries that I have created are actually to serve us as tools and instruments for assisting us with fine-tuning our awareness and recalibrating our awareness to higher frequencies. So some of the listeners know that we are actually being invited to raise our frequency to the next octave of consciousness that we are moving into. And there are many stories afoot in the world about what that looks like and how it's configured and what have you. I won't talk about that. I'll simply say that consciousness is being elevated. And what we are doing is raising consciousness by way of thoughts and feelings. And thoughts and feelings actually create patterns. Here's a composition right here that I created, and that's only a detail of the composition. Some of you might recognize this. It's in mathematics, it's called a KOCH crystal, and the term crystal is not just representative of a three-dimensional form, but it's actually representative of a two-dimensional pattern. So this is a two-dimensional pattern, and this pattern was generated by my hands. And okay, we have the Etsy site up now. So if you look at, if we can pull up any of those images, I can just talk about those if we may, or talk about several of them.
How about those?
Oh, that's fine. Any of them. It doesn't matter. You know, just click on any of them.
Well, I like the art, especially like the art. You've shown us some the other pieces, but these art. This is one of the river fractal.
Yeah.
Is one.
Yeah. Can you click on that? Double click on that. It should take you to a detail. Maybe it won't. Okay.
There.
Okay. Well, I apologize. I thought it was going to take us to the specific composition, but it didn't. Okay. So if we can't see a larger image of that, I'll apologize.
No, I can. I'm trying to bring that up now.
Oh.
Let's see. I have to share it again.
Okay.
But tell you mentioned a word that some may not understand, the
dodecahedron. Right.
What exactly is that?
Well, the hedron means sides, and sides of a three-dimensional form. So the word polyhedron means more sides than one. The first polyhedron that you can make is actually what's called a tetrahedron. The word tetra comes from Latin, and it means four. And so the word octa comes from Latin. There we have it. Yes, so that's a fourfold symmetry composition that you're looking at. When I say fourfold symmetry, I mean that what's to the right is also to the left, and it's above and below. So you have the same pattern in four directions. And that's one of the reasons that we use the term symmetry. Symmetry, the breaking of symmetry, means that something is symmetrical, and now you've divided it into more than one identical part. So in this particular composition, we could say that we have four identical parts, but we can actually take it a step further and say that we have 8 identical parts. And only those who know mathematics would understand, or geometry for that matter, would understand what I mean by you can see that you have 4 larger circles that have the same information inside of each one of them. But each one of those circles is divided in half, and it can actually be quartered. So referencing the notion of 8 identical sections, if you draw a line from the center diagonally across the body of that form in both directions, you would be slicing the pattern up into 8 sections, because you have a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. And with 2 diagonal axes, you have the number 8. Okay, so, but that's all technical jargon, and I apologize. This is another mandala that was created many years ago, and it's actually, it has text in it, and the text says sacred love. And so this was made into a card. And what I do is I take some of my compositions and I make them into cards. And what happens is these cards are distributed, sold, and what have you. I'm not really marketing them right now, but I do have the intention of going back to marketing them in the future. And this is another interesting composition based on the number 5.
Oh, wow. Okay. Is that on the Etsy site?
I don't think so. I have cards of these, but I actually haven't posted the cards on Etsy site. Right. But these are actually drawings that are actually related to my studies of geometry. And my studies of geometry began in 1989 with a man who is now deceased. His name is Robert Lee Powell Sr. And Robert Lee Powell Sr. was teaching what is conveniently thought of as sacred geometry. And he was instrumental in bringing forward, as a physicist, he was instrumental in bringing forward what's called non-invasive holography as a diagnostic tool, but we won't talk about that right now. This is another one of those compositions which was created as a result, I'm trying to figure out, okay, right, tilted that way. Yeah, tilted that way, right. Created as a result of me studying this geometry with Robert Lee Powell Sr. So both halves of this composition have the same information on them. It's just that I colored what's on the right hand side is colored differently from what's on the left hand side. And you can see on screen now, you can see another composition which is related to it. It's called Aromatic Vortex. The name has to do with an exhibition that I was in where I had two works of art that were created specifically for the exhibition because it was to commemorate 200 years of a particular individual who had brought grapevines to the Americas to create vineyards. And that show was held in San Francisco.
Now, when I look at the aromatic vortex, that affects me in a way that I want to get up and do some yoga. It's like that all some of the other ones, like the river fractal, I just want to kind of relax and be in a different zone. But how do these geometry shapes, especially like the one over your head, how do they affect our psyche? Are each one meant to affect us in a different way? Is it meant to stimulate and relax? How do you see your work?
Well, the thing about that is that to use words like stimulate and relax, for some, what is relaxing is for others stimulating. So,
Right.
we have to ask, a dozen people or more, how does this particular image or this particular composition affect you?
Mm-hmm.
But because it is true that one person will be stimulated, another person will be put in a sedated state or whatever. Now, so I don't try to determine what someone will experience. That is none of my business. My business is to create what wants to be created so that it can be shared with the world, and individuals that have the experience they'll have what's called a takeaway. And the takeaway really is between, them and higher self or God, however you want to language it. So like the form that's hanging over my head over here, that red form, it's too much to try to talk about, but it is incomplete. But if it were complete, it would have 6 pyramidal shapes, 4 around the waistband and 1 going up and 1 going down. The only one that's actually complete is the one at the top. I'm trying to figure out how to do this. Yeah, the one at the top, you see the yellow struts and you see the red struts. So that particular pyramid is complete. It's basically a study for a composition.
So the inspiration that comes to you to create these beautiful pieces, it's not specific to say, well, this is the result's going to be in individuals, right? You're just creating from a special inspiration, divine inspiration, spirit inspiration. And then when it's completed, how do you sometimes have a particular idea of what the intention is in those pieces?
Well, the further I go in this experience, the more I realize that each one of these compositions are impregnated with a potential to effect change in consciousness. So that is a given. All of these compositions, it's actually like it's a storytelling, if I may. So I'm actually telling stories, poetically and metaphorically speaking. I'm painting pictures, but these pictures are intended to effect change in the consciousness of the individual that encounters them. So this composition behind me over on this side, now wait a minute, how does that work? Yeah, over on that side, that composition, it's actually a 9-fold symmetry composition, and it actually has it actually has 6 sets of spirals spiraling towards the center. And those 6, so Viyahta, okay, yeah, all right. So those 6 spirals, 3 yellow, 3 blue, and 3 red, those 6 spiraling patterns that are spiraling to the center, one can actually see them also as emanating from the center and spiraling out. And that's a fractal. I think it's a 5-iteration fractal. And it is actually, how do I say this? There's much more to it. I apologize. Let us take a look at one of these. Now, that's a very interesting composition right there, Eye of Illumination.
Yeah.
It's actually related to what some individuals were able to see with their spiritual eye before we had a microscope, before we had electron microscopes. There were some individuals who pooled their resources of awareness and were able to see with their spiritual eye what the atom of gold looked like. So that composition titled Eye of Illumination actually represents an atom of gold.
Wow.
The energetic signature of it. Now, the person that bought the original in 2009 told me that she had a transformative experience when she saw it on the wall in the gallery. She never shared with me the details of that transformative experience, but I do know that people do have mystical experiences, transformative experiences when they see my work. And of course, I don't know all of the stories, but I've had a number of the stories come to me for one reason or another. Yes.
Wow, that reminds me of the sun. It looks like the pattern you would see if you had a close up of the sun, because I guess of the glow behind it.
Yeah, those rays that you see emanating from that orb-like form
Yeah.
actually represent consciousness.
Oh,
And so every one of these forms is actually presented as an aspect of sentience or an aspect of consciousness. And some people actually identify with them as that. So take, for instance, Before We Knew, Before We Knew, you see these rays that are emanating from this vesica. And those rays actually represent consciousness. But you have the circle that encloses the vesica Pisces. Then you have the two sets of interlocking circles that give you the blue and the red pattern. That blue and red pattern represents the masculine and the feminine. And so this composition has to do with masculinity, femininity, the interlocking of masculinity and femininity, which means there's an interarticulation between the two polar opposites that gives you a third quality. And
wow.
that third quality would be called relationship or dynamic relationship between a male and a female, or between two individuals. Yes.
Or I see that also as within each individual, the dynamics of male and female energy
We do have that. Yes, absolutely.
balancing and intertwining.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah. So it can be a statement about two individuals, or it can be a statement about two qualities that live within each one of us.
Right, right. The yin and the yang. You said you had a picture of something the last time we spoke about yin and yang energy.
Yes.
I
Well,
don't know.
okay. So many of my compositions actually speak to that. The one titled "Window to the Golden Temple," that composition actually talks about yin and yang also in a very
This
subtle.
over here.
Yes, that one there. You're right. Yes.
Okay.
So a lot of my work actually speaks to the yin and yang phenomenon, but most people don't see it because they're accustomed to seeing one or two patterns that represents the yin and the yang. But the yin and yang are the phenomenon of the yin and yang can be expressed in a multiplicity of ways. And like I said, I'm addressing that with a lot of work that I do. Yes. I don't know if you can actually enlarge that one. Can you double click that one?
Let's see. Is that showing up? No, let me see.
That's all right. That's all right. It's okay. People can go to the website and look at it. Those images that you see there only represent a small body of work that is available. Those are called mini prints, and some of them are like maybe the size of a piece of paper, but we have larger prints. I did send you a list of the larger prints, and I don't have a easy access to these larger prints. But if anyone is interested, they can send me an email and ask me to send them the information about the larger prints, because we have a lot more prints that are available.
I want to blow that up because now that I see how large see the beauty of the details. Let me see if I can you, yeah.
Oh, yes, right, yeah. You
Well,
see,
that,
once again, those rays around that orb represent
wow.
this. Now, in ancient Egypt, we have a symbol. In the very center of that composition, you'll see a little sliver that almost looks like a mouth open. Okay, and that symbol for me represents sound, or an emanation of sound. So I'm actually speaking to people on multiple levels when I create these compositions, and some people get it and some people don't, and it doesn't matter who gets it and who doesn't get it, because we can only absorb that which we are ready to absorb. We are only capable of experiencing what our consciousness is ready to accept as being relevant or real. So I'm speaking to everybody, and at the same time, not everybody gets the same message. Not everybody understands what they're looking at, but there is, I'll say, a transfer of essence when we make something with our hands. And all of these compositions are made by hand, by the way. I don't use a computer. Like I tell people, I am the computer. So I draw all of those circles with a compass, and I draw all of the lines with a straight edge. So that's all done by hand. And I've been doing this for 25 years or more. Yes.
So, you said something last time about how these are mirrors of cosmic energy. Can you go into that a little bit? And then we want to talk about the other technology of Tachyon, but I just wanted to I made a note of how is this mirrors of cosmic energy? Because that's what we're all, when we're talking about creating a positive timeline, you sent me a video on using crystals, and you mentioned the pineal gland as a crystal. So this is all coming together to explain who we are. We're the mirror. How are we mirrors of cosmic energy in this work that we see and this journey that we're on?
Yes. Well, each one of us are a fractal fragment of a whole, WHOLE, that we cannot see. But we can't see it with our physical eyes, of course. But now we can grasp it with our minds if our minds are free and unencumbered from concepts, limiting concepts, self-limiting concepts in particular. But so this whole idea of cosmic energy, or even cosmic consciousness, consciousness manifests through pattern. So if you look at anything that you look at, if you observe carefully, it's all pattern. Everything in the human body is pattern. Everything in nature is pattern. Everything in the heavens is pattern. So everywhere you look is pattern. Everywhere one's attention is turned, there's pattern.
Yeah, especially like the sunflower seed. I love that pattern.
Yes.
Right. Oh, the sunflower flower. Yeah.
Yes. And that contains what people understand as the golden proportion. And that's another whole story. But each one of those spirals actually represents a spiral that is also part of the Milky Way. The Milky Way galaxy has the very same spiral in it. Okay.
Wow.
So was the fetus of a newly organized living being, not just human, but other beings that our bodies develop from in a spiraling pattern. Okay. And then you have spirals in our bones. Our bones actually spiral. They're not straight. You know, if you study bones, if you study carrots, if you study trees, look at trees. If you pay attention to trees and look at the bark on the outside, the bark is generally going to be spiraling either to the left or spiraling to the right. So I've made a study of nature and patterns in nature. So like horns on animals, all of the horns generally spiral. When I say all of them, let's say particular antelopes and what have you have spiraling horns. That's because the etheric forces which give us the patterns that we're seeing with our physical eyes, the etheric forces are causing matter to organize in these patterns. And that's all part of something that's called cosmic blueprints of living matter. So all life forms have a pattern because of the cosmic invisible blueprint that is determining the pattern that is manifesting. So soul is inside all of these bodies having an experience in the worlds of duality. And we are slowly migrating to a plateau of awareness where we actually see that pattern has great meaning, and that our thoughts are patterns, our feelings are patterns, our behavior are patterns. And the question that wants to be asked, what patterns am I exhibiting and to what ends?
Well, I was thinking about our fingerprints. The
Yes.
spirals, it's always fascinating to think about. We all have different fingerprints, and yet look at how similar we are. And in
Yeah.
our makeup, we got hands, we got fingers, but when you look into the actual pattern,
Yep,
it's very unique.
yes, right.
Love
All
that.
of these patterns are quite unique. Yep.
How about that?
Yeah, yeah.
This temple, this sacred temple, I that's what I teach in my health and well-being, and everything that I teach is about how sacred we are, and that when we get back to how sacred we are, maybe we can choose better and appreciate this vessel, this advanced communication system that we're in. But you're just bringing out the beauty of this vessel in so many ways.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I don't know how many listeners are aware of the term subliminal seduction, but there are there are a clan of humanoids that have been using subliminal seduction to their advantage and to the general public's disadvantage for centuries. I am also working with subliminal seduction to the ends of liberation. And when I say liberation, I'm talking about liberating consciousness from some of the rigid constructs that have been designed as cages for soul to live in, walk in. And the idea is that we are offering keys for individuals to experience towards the ends of liberation of consciousness from the cages that have been constructed to seduce people into identifying with self-limiting concepts. So my song is a liberation song, even if it doesn't look like music. I'm going to claim that it is music. It's visual music. Yes, as some people know, all pattern is akin to music. It's just a matter of knowing how to read the music. So I'm making music.
When you refer to cages, you mean this human vessel?
No, not the human vessel, but the concepts, the concept.
Mental.
Yes, the mental cage. Right. Yes. No. The physical vessel is an instrument, which is a gift for us to use, for soul to use, to have experiences here. I'm not talking about that cage, even though some people do have understandings that would consider this a cage and a prison. But I'm not trying to speak to that tonight. That's a complete different wavelength that we could explore. But right now, I'm simply talking about the mental cages that people live in and habitate because it is unknown to them. We actually have, my name is actually, the last name is spelled wrong. It says Minnant as opposed to Hinnant. So those who are looking at higher knowledge and vibrations in the village with artist Vandorn.
That's my mistake.
I understand, but I'm just telling, let people know that that's an Hinnant so that they can write it down and not miss finding me in cyberspace or whatever.
I got that. I got it. Thank you for pointing that out. I missed that. We corrected that already.
I just saw it. Yes, thank you. So yes, so we have beautiful songs that have come to us that talk about liberation of humankind from slavery and from mental slavery and what have you. And so I am suggesting to the audience that these forms and these patterns are serving the same purpose to assist with the liberation of human consciousness from a plantation of not knowing. Yes, so that the universe is vast and our human capabilities are vast, and yet most of us live in these tiny cages of awareness where our attention is directed in a very, very small circle. So we're like the dog with the tail in his mouth. Yeah, the dog with the tail in his mouth, just running around in circles, simply because the program has been established to have us running in circles. But we can get off of that curious merry-go-round of and experience an expanded state of awareness. Some of the mind-altering substances that people are experimenting with do assist with that. I don't do any of the mind-altering substances. We could say that let's go to pranayama, or breathing, and that takes us to Tachyon. I'm glad we were able to segue.
Well, let me just say this thing. When you were talking about cages,
yes,
it reminded me of a book called "We're All Doing Time."
yes,
And it's a book based on a ministry, a prison ministry.
yes,
And I had the author of that book on my show a few years ago. And when you said cages, I thought, wow, you know, people who are in prison, the physical prison,
yes,
they find themselves confused and unhappy and depressed. And yet this book brings out the need to use tools like meditation
yes.
when you feel like you're in prison.
Mhm.
So that's why when you mentioned cages, my mind went to, oh, prison. So many people feel not only if they're in physical prison, but the mental cage here. And so when we feel like that, that's when I think the tachyon tools and other therapies can help free us from this prison, which is all mental.
Yes.
So yeah, tachyon is one of those things we want to talk about because there's so many tools now that can free us from that mental cage.
Yes. Well, everybody that has any relationship to meditation or contemplation know that you can free your mind. You don't have to use anything other than choosing to either step away from the mental chatter. That's one way of doing it, and that's a key to personal freedom, is to leave the mental chatter behind. There are many tools, but talking about the breath, the sacred breath, the pranayama yoga, you know, conscious breathing. You reminded me earlier when we were talking that you basically said, "Hey, just take a breath," because I sounded like I was wound up. You know, sometimes I get wound up. I'm trying to share a lot of information in a very short amount of time, so I'm speeding, and of course, speeding isn't necessary, and it's even hazardous to my health and others' health. But I do it sometimes, and the Tachyon technology that has been made available to us, and those that don't know what Tachyon means, Tachyon is a term that was coined back in 1977, and it represents, it's a word that is related to our ability to create magnifying glasses for life force energy. So anybody that knows anything about healing through the heart energy, Reiki, vibrational healing of any kind, using sound, using crystals, all of this technology that we are using, and I use the word technology loosely, I'm talking, it's metaphorically speaking. Meditation is a technology, it's a tool to use towards the ends of returning to one's sacred center so that one can recompose oneself and operate at a higher frequency of survival, so that one can articulate that which is essential in the moment and share something that's of a positive impact or effect upon their environment, which includes people, neighbors, the world. And the Tachyon technology that I encountered in 1995 made it possible for me to address a physical condition where I had been in a car accident in '81 and had damaged a lower disc in my back. And so in 1995, I started applying Tachyon technology to the lower disc damage and found miraculous results of actually experiencing a complete reduction of pain. And I would venture to say that some healing took place, even though I never went back to the chiropractor to say, I want to take another x-ray. I thought about it for a whole decade and I just never went back. I said, you know, I'm experiencing this. It is not imaginary. So I don't need to go have a chiropractor confirm that I'm having a different experience. I know that I'm having a different experience. But Tachyon technology has been used by people all over the planet to address physical conditions where you want to provide the body with more life force energy. I'm taking some Tachyon products that are ingested, where the Tachyon is put in blue-green algae, is put in silica gel, and they're actually putting tachyonized particulates in water. You can actually tachyonize water, which means you raise the vibrational frequency of the water. And so there are many ways to introduce our experience, our human experience to tachyon. One of the things that I might not have talked to you about is that they make these silica discs that where the tachyon energy flows in one side at the regular rate and it flows out the other side magnified and amplified. So what you have is just like a magnifying glass would magnify the sun's rays and you could burn a piece of paper. Well, with the tachyon cells, you can magnify life force energy and it comes through the tachyon cell and comes out the other side magnified and amplified. So you're getting more life force energy that once again is magnified and amplified through these things that are called tachyon cells. So they make them out of glass. They make them out of silica that is sandwiched between two pieces of plastic. So they look like they look sort of like CDs, and because they're round and what have you. But they're very, very powerful technology, and it's been available for a long time now. So there's a company out in California, even though I think they moved to Colorado. I sent you the information. It's called Advanced Tachyon Technologies. So the way you find it is that you go into cyberspace and look up Advanced Tachyon Technologies, and you can find them. You can get them to send you information, and you can start experimenting with their products.
Now, it's spelled Tachyon, right?
Yes.
ACHY. So for those of you listening, we want you to look into this because it really is a technology that we all should be familiar with. And as we develop the new healthcare system, I have been promoting after the last 2 years of Twilight Zone episodes at one after the other. Right. We're going on a new healthcare system and leaving the sick care system behind.
Thank you.
Tachyon is part of our new healthcare system, right?
Yeah. Yes, it is. And I wanted to add that I know that tachyon, being in close proximity to tachyon cells, it not only has an effect upon us physiologically, but psychologically and emotionally. Because what's happening is more spirit is being infused into the equation, our personal energy field. And I've noticed since 1995 that the tachyon technology that I have used has had an effect upon my consciousness, not just my physiology, but my consciousness, which includes the psychological and the emotional realms. So it's kind of like a full body treatment, if I may. And let's not try to talk about all of the different things that you can do with tachyon, but people are having some amazing experiences with tachyon. They even have things that are called tachyon chambers, where you get inside of this room, which has a bunch of tachyon rays beaming into the room. And it is amazing. It's quite elevating and stimulating, uplifting. And some people, it's overwhelming simply because not everybody is capable of handling the same amount of tachyon energy. So,
well, I think just as you said, your art can have a different effect on individuals, and all of us are not going to respond or receive them the same way because we are so different in our experience and our history and our traumas. And I think what I've heard of tachyon is it begins to help, but once we experience tachyon energy, it starts to change the way we look at our history. Is that one way to put it?
It can definitely assist in that. All of us are on a spiritual journey towards something that I'll call liberation, okay? And liberation from self-limiting concepts, which includes limiting concepts about who we are, why we are, where we are, and who and what are the same thing, and what our purpose in life is. And so tachyon technology can help to provide one with more energy so that one can make this jump if they're attempting to make a jump or a quantum leap from one plateau of consciousness to another. That is a given. I mean, the company used to actually do workshops. It was called the Quality of One, where they were using the tachyon technology intentionally towards the ends of raising consciousness with individuals. Now, I don't know if they're still doing that, the last time I got a report about these workshops was perhaps a year or so ago. So it may be more hush hush today than it used to be, but they used to openly advertise those workshops on the website a decade ago, maybe even 5 years ago. Yeah.
So we're coming close to the end of the hour, and I'd love for you to share the forgiveness
Oh, yeah. Okay.
statements that can help our chakra energy, or just in general help us work on forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I believe the word "fly," first love yourself, is key in the village for people to begin to turn their health conditions around, health challenges around, because so many people don't love themselves. In my work as a coach, that's one of the first areas you run up against when you try and do tapping, EFT, is that people have a hard time saying, I deeply love myself. It's like, oh, I can't say that. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So this prayer that Vandorn, or this is, would you say it's a prayer?
We can call it a prayer, right? A prayer or a meditation, a contemplation. We can call it a declarative statement because it's all of that and some. What happened is we have Dr. Hugh Lin, who is now deceased, and we have Dr. Emoto, who is now deceased. Both of these individuals brought us some very important information about the relationship of consciousness, intent, and thoughts to our living conditions. So Dr. Emoto, Messages in Water, showed us, I'll use the word irrefutable proof, that our thoughts impact water and create either unpleasant or not so beautiful patterns, or beautiful patterns, depending upon what we're thinking and feeling and saying. And Dr. Hugh Lin, something called Ho'oponopono, which is sort of like a forgiveness prayer in effect. So what I did is I combined both of those bodies of knowledge and crafted a 7 statements that draw from this wisdom that was passed on by Dr. Hugh Lin and Dr. Emoto. And so the 7 statements go like this. I apologize.
Before you start, I would like to ask everyone to take a deep breath and set a personal intention of what you would like to receive from this prayer, and to just let it absorb into your cells, and take a deep breath and just let these words penetrate like a flow of healing water into your very being. And if you want, close your eyes while Vandorn shares these powerful words with us.
And you could either think the thoughts, or you can speak the words, repeat them after me, either one.
Oh, okay.
I want to inform everyone that these words are some of the most powerful medicine that I personally have been given. And I have used them now for a very, very long time, for physiological conditions, for psychological, emotional conditions, and relational conditions. So say if you're in a relationship with someone and you're having trouble navigating that relationship, you can actually think these thoughts or say these words inwardly, or write them. It doesn't matter. The idea is that we are intending to change the condition. And so these statements, I'm gonna say it 2 different ways, from the I vantage point and from the we vantage point. So when I say we, I'm actually talking about doing group karma work, resolution between individuals, families, communities, nations, races, any of the above. So the I am statement goes like this. I apologize.
I apologize.
Please forgive me.
Please forgive me.
I love you.
I love you.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
I respect you.
I respect you.
I thank you.
I thank you.
Now. And so the way I use that is I will just say it over and over and over again. And one of the things that can be done is we can apply those 7 statements to the 7 chakras. So at the root chakra, I apologize. Then the solar plexus, the hara, say, please forgive me. The second chakra, you say, please forgive me. The next chakra below the heart, the solar plexus, we say, I love you. And then the heart chakra, we say, I appreciate you. The throat chakra, we say, I respect you. The third eye, we say, I thank you. And the crown chakra, we say now. So I apologize. Please forgive me. I love you. I appreciate you. I respect you. I thank you now. And you can say that over and over again, like a round. You can sing it. There are many ways of using these 7 statements, but the more you say it, the more you think it, the more effect you will have, that I will claim is positive. And then if you're doing relationship work where you're trying to adjust energies between yourself and another, or groups, you can even do what's called group karma dynamics, where you say, my ancestors in relation to your ancestors, we apologize. Please forgive us. We love you. We appreciate you. We respect you. We thank you now. So those are the 7 statements, and they are powerful. You can apply them to any condition. You can speak them to your water. You can speak them to your food. You can speak them to your neighbor, your beloved, your favorite enemy, if I may. Yeah. So once I had a hiccup in a business relationship, and I was thinking, how do I say I love you to this person when I was feeling really tagged about their behavior? And it took me some time to get over that feeling tagged about this person's behavior, because for me it was unethical and what have you. But I allowed myself to get into that interesting dynamic. I lived through it, and I'm sure the other person lived through it. And so it's powerful medicine. It's applicable to just about anything. Yeah.
And I think I need to use it with people in my life who have bigger egos than mine. Let me put it that way. It's not like I don't have a little ego, but some people who are huge egos, I need to use this on instead of judging or just feeling like I don't want to be around these people. This is, I think, a powerful way to change the dynamics, the frequency in relationships. That's so key. We could go on and on about relationship issues, but another story, another day, another time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So how can people get a hold? What would you want? How would you give us the best ways to get a hold of you?
Well, that name you see on the screen, Vandorn Hinnant. If you go to vandornhinnant.com, you will actually land on my sculpture website. And then my other website, which is Light Weavings, LIGHTWEAVINGS. If you go to Light Weavings, you will land on my 2-dimensional work website. It has a few references to 3-dimensional work, but it's mostly about my 2-dimensional work. So those are the 2 sites that I have. And I invite you to visit them and enjoy what you see. And if you're interested in reaching out to me, you can reach out to me from either one of those websites.
Oh, and thank you so much. And what I'll do is put those websites at the bottom of the screen, since we are on YouTube, and people can contact you. I think everyone, including me, I need some new artwork in my house, my new house. Yes. I have artwork in there that doesn't do much for my moods, I would say, or my emotions. And so when I look at your work, I really feel something different, a higher frequency, I would say.
They're designed to elevate. They're designed to inspire, elevate, stimulate the mind, all of that and some. And they actually have been used by some people as a healing medium. Some people experience these compositions. And I had one healthcare practitioner who saw one of these compositions on a computer screen, and she told me this, she had a spontaneous healing in her left shoulder. So this is to suggest that doorways in consciousness can be opened by viewing these compositions or being in close proximity to the sculptural forms. There's a whole lot more that can be said about that. If you visit the Etsy site, it's called A Gallery of Secrets. Just go to Etsy and go to A Gallery of Secrets. If you visit that site, I've written just a little bit about what I think these orbs do, these spherical forms. And there's a whole lot more to be said, but those few sentences that are applied to that site give you just a little bit of an idea. And people have had some amazing experiences wearing them. I have a lot of people that report back to me and tell me what type of experience they have in response to either having one of these orbs in close proximity to them in the room. And that we actually have a few that are actually large enough to hold in your palm, and they're designed to go on people's altars. And we've only sold one. I have someone up in Ohio that purchased one maybe 4 months ago, and I'm sure he placed it on his altar. But we have a few more pieces that are available for people to place on their altar. So they do have an impact upon consciousness because they're related to the energetic signatures in gemstones. And that's one of the things that I didn't say before. But these geometries that I'm working with are actually related to energetic signatures that are emanating from gemstones because of the atomic structure, the relationship between the atoms in the gemstones.
Thank you so much, Vandorn, for sharing all this higher knowledge. And it just goes to show you we should always be conscious, even choosing earrings, for instance, or the items that we put on our body, especially, but the items that we put on our wall, they do have an effect on our pineal gland, that crystal you talked about earlier. So yeah, it's so important to be conscious. The consciousness is everything.
Yes. I'm going to call it the magic crystal of consciousness, the pineal gland, right? Lots of people have metaphors. Some people call it the seat of the soul. But the heart is actually underrated in terms of what we call sentience. I think of the heart as the first brain. And then this instrument that we have on the top of our heads is like a respondent to what's happening in the heart. So those of you who know about subtle energy know that the heart is a conscious organ that is actually directing traffic in our human experience. And so we've been tricked into believing the opposite, that this thing on the top of our body called our head is a central processing, well, it's the center of all processing. That is a false notion. Without a heart, the head has no value. And that's a metaphor also. So we'll leave that alone. But I would simply say, those of us who find our way to our heart, we're navigating in intent in such a way that we can't help but be of service to humankind. And those who are disconnected, have a disconnect from their heart, are actually running distortions that they're not even aware of. And that's not a judgment. That's just an observation that looks like a judgment, sounds like a judgment, but it's not a judgment. It's simply saying that I've witnessed enough people who appear to have a disconnect from their heart to know that the decisions that they're making have very little to do with assisting others. So we're now going to switch around to this conversation that's afoot in the world, the question of, am I service to self or am I service to other? And service to self can only take one so far in the spiritual journey. Service to other, I would venture to say, can take us a very long way to liberation. Yes.
And all of that is so true. I'm just, as you're speaking, I'm like, yeah, it's true, true. And then in my journey, because of what the last 2 years have taught me about fear, I had to dig deep into this kingdom that my soul is dwelling in. And what some people call the first brain is the gut or the large intestines.
Yeah.
Because of the trillions of microbes that they have discovered in the microbiome.
Yes.
So yes, the heart is just playing this major role in our existence and our journey. And so that's a brain too, because of the way it functions. And yet this is the command center up here that is communicating to both the heart and the gut on how we're going to survive and thrive and prevent disease and all that. So, and then the pineal gland. So that's why I call it an advanced communication system.
Yeah.
Because we are in a very sacred place, just sitting here talking. Yeah. And I share with people, I say, everywhere you go is sacred if you have the consciousness to know what's here, what is this? This is all sacred. So every place you go is sacred when you're there.
Wherever you go, if you are identified with the sacrality that is you, then you take the sacred with you. And for me, that's what worship is really about. taking the sacred with me wherever I go, so that that can be felt, sensed, comprehended, have an impact upon others, however that may play out. That is none of my business and none of my concern, but simply to allow that which is sacred to flow through my consciousness, out of my heart, into the world, and touch other people's lives. So that takes me back to that little refrain from our an old Negro spiritual. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. So
Absolutely.
that's one of my favorite lines of all times. I love to use it. So.
Absolutely. And I created this visual introduction with pictures that I have experienced all over the United States. I have pictures in this introduction that are from Oregon when I first went to a place called Boring, Oregon, and I met a tiny house. I was like, whoa. And so all the pictures that I put together in this introduction with the music, they're from my journey across the United States.
Beautiful.
And that's why I'm grateful to have you add your higher knowledge and sacred geometry to this village that I'm promoting for people to have an overground railroad experience here. And I hope that everyone who's watching has had that experience where you come out of the matrix and the confusion that this world brings when we are too attached to consumerism and all the other things that are anti-village, so to speak.
Yes.
So
well, let's take it to a higher ground and keep it there. Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you once again. I hope I get a chance to visit North Carolina. I haven't. Only place I've been is Asheville, and I'm ready to explore other parts. So I look forward to meeting you in North Carolina one day.
Wonderful. Looking forward to the visit. Thank you. Thank you.
You and your beautiful wife. So greetings to Anna Marie, and thank her for being the wonderful person she is, because behind every good man, what can we say?
Well, I can only say thank you, because that relationship has been so supportive,
Partnership. It's that's what it's all about. I'm single now, but and I think every person, you're a partner, soul partner for me now. All the people I meet are soul partners now, who can have this type of conversation. So I hope all of you out there can have these type of relationships that Vandorn and I are developing, where we can truly talk about things that matter, the pineal gland and the microbiome and geometry that is everywhere. So we love it. Yeah. So have a great week, the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you next time. But
beautiful.
Until then, we're going to share more of my journey.